What happens when a millionaire CEO walks into one of his own stores looking like he just crawled out of a bus station? Zeke Callahan tugged the frayed collar of his faded flannel shirt and stepped through the glass doors of Store 11, one of 12 locations his late father had built from the ground up. The place looked sleek on the outside, same branding, same layout as the others. But Zeke wasn't here for the walls. He hadn't been to this location in person before. It opened 3 years ago, after his dad passed and left him the company. Zeke had been running things from the top floor of headquarters boardrooms, spreadsheets, phone calls. But lately, complaints about customer service and employee morale were coming in from Store 11. Nothing concrete. Just off. He didn't trust second-hand reports anymore. So he let his beard grow out, wore torn jeans, a wrinkled hoodie, and old boots. Left his phone in the car. Even the security guard at the entrance barely glanced at him. Perfect. Inside, it was busy. The kind of steady weekday traffic they should be thriving on. Zeke moved slow, studying. A young woman, tired eyes, neat ponytail, was helping an elderly man find his way through the checkout line. She smiled, really smiled, even when the man fumbled his wallet. That was good. He made a mental note of her name tag. Harper Wallace. But before he could observe more, a sharp voice cut through the air behind him. Sir, can I help you? Zeke turned. A tall man in a pressed black polo, arms crossed, eyes locked on him like a stain on the floor. The name tag read, Mason Store Manager. I'm good, just browsing, Zeke said, keeping his voice low. Mason didn't budge. We've had some incidents lately. I'll need you to leave if you're not buying anything. Zeke blinked. Seriously? You're making customers uncomfortable. I've been here 5 minutes. Mason raised a hand. Security, to the front. Zeke felt his face heat. He looked around. A few customers paused mid-step. A teenage cashier whispered something to her coworker. Harper glanced over but stayed focused on the customer in front of her. A heavy-set security guard walked up. Problem here? Mason pointed. I need this man escorted out. Zeke sighed. He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim black leather wallet. You sure about that? Mason's sneer didn't move. Yeah, I am. Zeke flipped open the ID. Zeke Callahan. I own this company. Silence hit like a dropped plate. Mason's face strained. That's not real. Zeke cut him off, holding the ID up to the security guard. Want to call corporate? Ask for the CEO. The guard stepped back. Mr. Callahan. I'm sorry, sir. Mason stammered. I didn't know. I mean, you looked homeless? Zeke's voice was cold now. That's how you treat people who don't fit your image of a customer? I thought you didn't think. You just profiled me. Harper had stepped closer now, eyes wide. She looked from Zeke to Mason, then back again. A few employees lingered nearby, watching. Zeke turned his gaze across the store. How many people have you chased out of here, Mason? How many good customers, or even future employees? I follow store policy, sir. Zeke's jaw tightened. I'll be the judge of that. He turned to the employees. I'll be here the rest of the day. As myself. Anyone with something to say, my office is that table by the coffee stand. I want the truth. He walked past Mason, who didn't move. Harper looked after him, then turned to Mason. You really called security on the owner? Mason didn't answer. Zeke sat at the table, heart still beating fast. He hadn't expected it to blow up that fast. But maybe it needed to. He pulled out a small notepad and clicked a pen. The flood was about to start. The first person to approach Zeke was a stocky guy in a brown apron, maybe late 30s, with sweat staining the collar of his shirt. He hovered near the table for a second, fidgeting with the hem of his uniform. You waiting for me to wave you over? Zeke asked without looking up. The man gave a short breath. No, sir. Sorry. Just didn't want to crowd you. Zeke gestured to the chair across from him. Seat. Name? Luis Delgado. Been on freight team since we opened here. Zeke set his pen down.
All right, Luis.
Talk to me. Luis glanced around. Is this, like, really happening? Zeke nodded. You've got maybe 5 minutes. Nothing you say leaves this table unless it needs to. This isn't a trap. But I am listening. Luis leaned in, voice low. We're short-staffed pretty much daily. Supposed to have 6 on freight overnight, but we've been running with 3. Sometimes just 2. I get here at 5 a.m. to clean up the mess and stock the overs. Mason keeps cutting hours and blaming corporate. Zeke frowned. We haven't approved any hour cuts at this location in over a year. Luis gave a dry laugh. Well, someone's lying, and it ain't me. Zeke jotted something down. What about pay? Luis shrugged. Same as always. Just above minimum. No raise in 2 years. We used to get shift bonuses for overnight, but those vanished last spring. Zeke stared at him. Who told you they were discontinued? Mason. Said corporate got rid of them across the board. Zeke's jaw worked. We didn't. He's pocketing the difference. Luis blinked. You're serious? As a heart attack. Luis shook his head slowly. Man, I knew something was off. But you can't prove that, right? Zeke tapped the side of his notepad. I will. Before Luis could say more, a voice interrupted. Excuse me? Zeke looked up. A woman in her 50s stood near the table, arms crossed, laminated badge clipped to her blouse. She didn't sit, just stared down. Something you need? Zeke asked. You're interfering with the floor flow, she said stiffly. We're already behind on conversion today. Zeke raised an eyebrow. And you are? Patricia, assistant manager. Zeke held her gaze. You're aware I own the company, yes?
She paused.
I've been informed. Then sit down. I'm on shift. Then I suggest you make this quick. She reluctantly pulled the chair beside Luis, never breaking eye contact. I just don't see how this helps anything. You're causing a disruption. Luis shifted in his seat. It's not a disruption if it's the truth. Patricia glanced at him, then back at Zeke. We have quotas, metrics. You can't expect us to meet corporate goals with limited resources. Why are there limited resources? She hesitated. We were told to manage within budget constraints. By whom? Patricia looked away. Mason handles the budget. Zeke let the silence hang. Then he leaned forward. You've worked under him for how long? 2 years. And in that time, did you ever question where the money went? Why your team was shrinking while revenue stayed level? She didn't answer. Zeke stood. I'll speak with you again later. You're dismissed. Patricia stood as well, lips pressed tight, and walked off without another word.
Luis exhaled.
She's not bad, you know. Just keeps her head down. Mason runs this place like a boot camp. Zeke nodded. I'm learning. Over the next hour, employees came in waves. Some cautious, some blunt. A cashier named Danny, barely out of high school, talked about being written up for taking a bathroom break 2 minutes too long. A merchandising associate, Clara, explained how Mason changed the schedule without notice, posting it the night before and docking hours if people asked questions. One woman, Sophia, on the cleaning staff, admitted she'd stopped reporting injuries because Mason accused her of faking. Harper showed up last.
She didn't sit.
Just leaned against the edge of the table, arms folded. I didn't come to complain, she said. Zeke looked up. Didn't ask you to. I saw what happened earlier. You stood your ground. Mason's not used to that. Zeke nodded slowly. You seem to handle yourself well. I try. But I'm tired. He gestured to the chair across from him. So sit. She eased into the seat, watching him carefully. I love working with customers. I like helping people, even when they're rude or confused or just plain lonely. But every week it gets harder to want to come in. What's making it worse? She hesitated, then said, "Last month, I was offered a lead cashier position. Mason said I was next in line. I took on extra shifts, trained the new kids, even stayed late to close on Saturdays. Then, 2 weeks ago, he gave it to someone else. A guy who's only been here 5 months. Zeke didn't speak. He told me it was because I seem hesitant sometimes, that I smile too much, and it comes off as weak." Zeke's pen stopped moving. "I've never had a customer complaint. Not once. But that guy? The new lead? He's already had 2. Still got the promotion, though. What's his relationship with Mason?" She narrowed her eyes. "They go to the same gym." Zeke nodded once. "You want that lead cashier position? I earned it. Then you'll have it. By the end of the week." Harper leaned back. "Just like that?"
No, not just like that.
"I'll review your file. But I trust my own eyes more than paperwork." She stared at him a moment longer, then stood. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Zeke's fine." She walked away, and for the first time since arriving, he felt something steady settle in his chest.
Not peace.
Something harder. Purpose. He gathered his notes, stood, and walked toward the back office.
The door was closed.
He knocked once, then opened it without waiting. Mason looked up from the desk, startled. "Sir. I didn't expect. You're done here." Mason's mouth opened, but Zeke didn't let him speak. "You lied to your team. You manipulated schedules. You stole incentive pay and pocketed bonuses. You profiled customers and created a workplace built on fear, not leadership. I think we should discuss this." "No. There's nothing to discuss. Security will escort you out. You're officially terminated. Effective immediately." Mason stood slowly. "You can't prove I can. And I will. But I don't need to prove anything to fire someone who treats people like garbage." Mason's face twisted, but he said nothing more, just grabbed his tablet and keys. As he left the office, employees nearby paused. A few straightened. One clapped once, then stopped, unsure. Zeke turned to the assistant manager standing nearby. "Get HR on the phone. We're doing a full audit of this location, starting now." Patricia nodded once, eyes downcast. Zeke stepped into the center of the store. "Everyone," he said, voice raised enough to carry. "I'm staying here through tomorrow. We've got damage to undo. But know this, if you're here to work hard and treat people right, you're in the right place. If not, this is your last warning." No one spoke, but heads nodded. Shoulders relaxed. Zeke didn't smile. He wasn't here for that. He was here to fix the house his father built. And he was just getting started. By the next morning, word had spread. Zeke arrived early, before the store opened. He wore the same clothes as the day before, not because he needed to, but because he wasn't here to look important. He was here to be present. He unlocked the side entrance with his master key and stepped into the quiet, fluorescent-lit floor. The air smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and cardboard. No music playing, yet no announcements. Just him and the hum of refrigeration units running in the background. He found Patricia already in the break room, sorting a half-crumpled stack of paper schedules on the folding table. She glanced up when he entered, her posture stiff.
"Morning," she said.
Zeke nodded once. "We've got a long day ahead." "I figured. HR's calling me in 30 minutes. They want a full report on everything. You'll give it to them." She looked down at the papers. "I didn't know everything Mason was doing." He stepped forward. "I believe you didn't know how deep it went."
"But you knew it wasn't right."
"That's not a crime, but it's not nothing either." She swallowed. "Understood. I need you sharp today. You're not off the hook. But if you're willing to lead right, you'll have a chance to earn your way back into trust." Patricia gave a small, tired nod. "I can do that." He left her to it and walked the perimeter of the store as the morning shift trickled in. Some employees glanced at him with a mix of curiosity and wariness, but most offered subdued greetings or avoided eye contact altogether. He didn't blame them. At 7, the front doors opened. Zeke stationed himself near the customer service desk with a hot coffee and a clipboard. He wasn't there to micromanage just to be seen. By 9, the first issue hit. A woman in a headscarf stood at checkout lane 4, her 2 children fidgeting beside her. Her cart was full produce, boxed goods, diapers stacked at the bottom. Harper was running the register 2 lanes over, focused on a separate customer. Zeke watched as the woman looked toward the cashier at lane 4, Shannon, a young woman with freshly dyed red hair and heavy eyeliner. Shannon didn't greet her. She scanned the first few items with one hand while tapping her phone with the other, eyes barely lifting. The customer said something softly. Zeke couldn't hear it, but Shannon rolled her eyes and said, "Look, if you want me to bag stuff a certain way, you need to say it before I start, not halfway through." The woman looked startled. Her son tugged at her sleeve. Zeke stepped forward slowly, watching. Another item scanned. Shannon huffed and turned to the woman. "I don't know what that is," she said, holding up a bag of dried lentils. "Is this even in English?" Zeke's hand tightened around the clipboard. He walked up to the lane. "Shannon." She looked up, annoyed, then froze. Zeke kept his voice even.
"Take a break. Now."
"But I just got on, now." Shannon glanced around, then shrugged and left the register. Zeke turned to the customer. "I'm very sorry for how you were treated," he said. "That behavior is unacceptable. Please let me help you finish this transaction." The woman hesitated, then nodded. Zeke moved behind the register and began scanning the rest of her items. The kids watched him silently, wide-eyed. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Amira," she said. "Thank you for your patience, Amira. If anything else happens like this, ever, you ask for me directly." She gave a small nod. "Thank you." After she left, he turned to Patricia, who had just approached. "Shannon's done here." Patricia didn't argue. "Understood. She's not being written up. She's being removed. I'll handle it." Zeke didn't give her time to hesitate. "And I want a full review of every customer complaint in the last 6 months. Start with cashier positions. Anything that smells like bias or disrespect, I want names." Patricia nodded and left. By noon, Zeke had moved into the back office. He met with the freight supervisor, a wiry man named Devin who'd been doing the job of 3 people for the last year. Devin laid it out plain. The overnight team had been gutted so badly they were stacking pallets during business hours just to stay afloat. Accidents were happening.
People were quitting mid-shift.
One guy walked out last week after slicing his hand open with no first aid nearby. Zeke didn't ask for excuses. He asked for solutions. "You give me 3 more full-time hires," Devin said, "and 2 part-time floaters for weekends, I can get this place back in shape in a month. But if I gotta keep patching holes with duct tape, nothing's gonna change." Zeke approved it on the spot and sent it to HR with his signature. By late afternoon, Harper found him again. She held a small paper bag in one hand. "I figured you hadn't eaten," she said, setting it down on the desk. "Turkey sandwich. The deli guy owed me a favor." He looked up, surprised. "Thanks." She shrugged. "You look like you're running on caffeine and adrenaline." "I am." She didn't sit, but leaned against the doorframe. "People are talking. There's a weird kind of hope going around." "That a problem?"
"No. Just."
"Nobody knows how long it'll last." Zeke nodded slowly. "That's fair."
She paused.
"Can I ask something real?" "Go ahead. You're not just here for a PR stunt, right?" He looked her in the eye.
"No."
"I'm not." "Then don't disappear when it gets better. That's what always happens. Someone comes in, makes a few speeches, fixes the worst of it, and walks away. 6 months later, it's back to the same mess." Zeke didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I'm setting up a rotation. Starting next quarter, I'll be spending 1 week every 2 months in a different store."
No warnings. No entouraje. Just me.
I'll work a shift, handle freight, mop floors, whatever's needed. She raised her eyebrows. Seriously? Seriously. Harper gave a quiet laugh. You're gonna scare a lot of middle managers. That's the idea. She turned to go, then paused. And the lead cashier role? You'll get your answer by tomorrow. Just know I've seen enough to make a strong case already. She walked out without another word. At closing time, Zeke stood at the front doors as the last customers exited. He thanked them individually by name, if he caught it, and held the door for an older man with a cane. Inside, the employees cleaned in silence, more thorough than usual. Not from fear, from awareness. He turned to Patricia as she approached with a clipboard. We had someone call out for closing shift, she said. Stocking team's short one. I'll cover it. She blinked. Sir, you... I said I'll cover it. He rolled up his sleeves and walked to the back room. Devin handed him a box cutter and pointed to a pallet of bottled water. Hope you've still got your back, he said. I've got it just long enough. They worked side by side for the next 2 hours. Zeke's hands burned from the cardboard. His shoulders ached. His boots were soaked by a leaking case of seltzer water. But he didn't stop. At 10, when the lights dimmed and the last register closed, he stood in the center of the sales floor. The team gathered in a loose circle around him, tired, wary, but present. He didn't raise his voice. You've carried more than you should have for too long, he said. That ends now. Tomorrow won't be perfect. Next week won't be either. But this store will change. And the people in it will lead that change from the floor, not from above.
No applause.
Just silence. Then a few nods. A shift in posture. A small breath of relief, breaking in the air. He didn't need cheers. He needed them to believe. And that was starting. The next morning, Store 11 opened with a different rhythm. The freight team was already midway through their unload when Zeke arrived. Devin had 2 new hires shadowing him, temporary transfers from a nearby location, just for the week. Not a permanent fix, but it gave the crew breathing room to catch up without working through exhaustion. Zeke didn't start the day with another speech. He simply walked the floor, not checking on people working alongside them. He stocked low shelves, fetched ladders, and helped Harper tape a cracked scanner cable back together behind lane 3. No cameras, no clipboard, no entourage. Just sleeves rolled up and eyes open. Around mid-morning, he sat down with Clara from merchandising. She'd sent a message asking to talk privately. They met in the break room, away from the others. Clara looked sharper today, hair tied neatly, uniform clean and pressed, but her fingers still tapped nervously against her thigh as she sat. I didn't say everything yesterday, she said. Zeke nodded once. Go on. I was part-time before Mason made me full-time last year. I thought it was a reward, but then he started asking for favors. Not anything physical. Just stuff like covering his mistakes, signing off on inventory that wasn't actually counted, writing down maintenance checks I didn't do. Zeke leaned forward slightly. Did you report it to anyone?
Once.
I emailed a district lead. Never got a reply. After that, Mason took me off the closing schedule, cut my hours, then gave them back when I stopped pushing. Do you still have the original email? Clara pulled a folded copy from her back pocket. Printed it. Just in case. Zeke took it and scanned the date. It had been 8 months ago. I'll follow up on this personally, he said. You're not in trouble. You did the right thing, and you're doing it again now. I didn't want to lose the job. You shouldn't have had to choose between honesty and keeping your hours. He paused. You'll be protected while we investigate the rest. And if you want to move departments, say the word. Clara exhaled. I'd appreciate that. They shook hands, and she left with a quieter step than she'd entered. Later that day, a delivery mix-up caused a delay in the dairy section. Zeke helped sort the pallets himself, while Devin coordinated with the vendor. It wasn't glamorous work, wet floors, dented crates, and a broken thermostat in the cooler, but it gave Zeke a chance to see how quickly the team adapted under pressure.
No scouting. No panic.
Just movement. During a brief lull, he caught Harper in the back room, wiping down a shared keyboard. She looked up, startled. You still doing everyone else's cleaning for them?
Zeke asked.
She gave a dry chuckle. Old habits. Some of the night team leaves stuff half done. I got tired of waiting. You shouldn't have to pick up slack that's not yours. I'd rather things work than wait for someone else to fix them. Zeke leaned against the doorframe. I looked over your employee file last night. Her eyes flicked up. And not a single 8 clock in. Highest customer satisfaction score in the district. You've trained 7 new hires in the last 6 months without being asked. Did you also see the written warning I got 2 months ago? I did. For questioning a schedule change that violated policy. You raised it respectfully. You were right. She nodded once, unsure of what to say.
It's official, he said.
You're the new lead cashier. Starts Monday. You'll get a raise and you'll help train a second lead for weekends. We're not going to overload one person anymore. Harper's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Thank you. You earned it. But this role comes with more than a title. I'll expect you to push back when things aren't right. With respect. But firmly. She nodded. I can do that. I know. He left her to it and moved on to the security station. He'd asked the company's head of loss prevention to meet him quietly that afternoon. They reviewed surveillance from the past 6 weeks, not just for Mason's behavior, but for anything that had slipped by unnoticed. Together, they flagged several incidents. Shannon ignoring customers repeatedly while on her phone, an assistant team lead clocking out early 3 times a week, and 2 separate cases of merch being mishandled and tossed rather than returned to inventory. Zeke made notes and took names. But he didn't fire people blindly. That evening, he called a meeting in the stockroom. Not everyone could attend, some were still on floor duty, but he made sure each shift would get a version of the conversation. He stood at the center, no platform, no microphone. We're cleaning house, he said. That doesn't mean we're throwing people away, but it does mean that standards matter again. Leadership is watching, and we're not interested in excuses. No one spoke, but eyes stayed locked on him. We'll be rehiring for the overnight crew. If you know good people, send them our way. We're raising the base pay starting next month. Corporate approved it this morning. But with that comes accountability. He paced slowly. If you've been cutting corners, now's your chance to step up before someone has to step in. No more quiet quitting. No more favoritism. And no more fear. A few heads nodded. One person clapped once, then stopped, but Zeke didn't need applause. He needed action. The next 2 days passed in a steady rhythm. Small changes began to take hold. The overnight crew moved faster, now that they weren't burned out. Harper trained a new hire with quiet authority. Clara transferred to front-end merchandising and caught 2 pricing errors within her first hour. Zeke stayed through the close of business Friday. Not to micromanage. Just to see it for himself. At 5:30, he sat in the break room, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup. Patricia entered, holding a binder under her arm. Weekly tallies, she said. Conversions up. Returns are down. Employee call-outs dropped this week.
Good.
She hesitated. I wanted to say, I appreciate the chance you gave me. I didn't always push Mason when I should have. I see that now. Zeke looked at her. The best apology is change. Keep making it. She nodded once, then left. As the evening wore on, customers trickled out slower. The store looked cleaner, brighter, not because of paint or lights, but because the people inside were standing taller. At closing, Zeke stepped outside and leaned against the brick wall. The air smelled like fresh rain and pavement. Harper joined him, arms crossed. You sticking around another week? No, he said. I've seen enough for now. She studied him a moment. You think it'll hold? I think it'll take work. But I left it in the right hands. She nodded. If it slips again, I'll be back. Quietly. And sooner than anyone expects. She gave a small smile. You really are your father's son. Zeke looked out across the parking lot. He built the bones. I'm just making sure they still stand. She left him with that. The lot emptied slowly. Lights flicked off one row at a time. The store closed not just for the night, but for the end of a chapter. Inside, the culture had shifted. Not fixed. Not finished. But finally, for the first time in a long time, facing the right direction.